What is the single greatest threat to Western civilization today?
Islam.
Tell me more.
It would be divisiveness, this concept that we can demoralize our opposition as a form of substitution to civil discourse.
We've somehow got ourselves into a position where we don't recognise that British citizens are actually the ones who should have the privileges of being British.
Oh my goodness. Can I pick 10?
Freedom of speech and the migrant crisis that's going on. I believe if President Trump wasn't elected, we would be in the path that you guys are going.
We have the extremist tail wagging the moderate dog, and they will never ever give up until they have turned Britain into a caliphate.
All of our civil liberties are being chipped away. All of our freedom being chipped away, our freedom of speech, everything's being chipped away. It's death by 1,000 cuts.
The single greatest threat is inaction of people like you and me. We saw what happened with Charlie Kirk. They are coming for everything, and we have got to make sure that we stand strong.
Censorship, because if we're not allowed to learn what's really going on, we can't make the right decisions. That's why they want to stop Elon Musk, because he has empowered millions of ordinary people.
Free speech, of course, being the pivotal, because you can't have anything else if you aren't allowed to talk about it.
People choosing to self-censorship.
I think it's complacency.
Grand remplacement, c'est-à-dire le remplacement de population de tous les peuples européens par des peuples venus du Sud, pour la plupart de culture musulmane.
Remigration now! Remigration now!
Raise patriots. Raise children that are proud of their country.
Right now, mass immigration, and here in the United Kingdom specifically, is freedom of speech.
Immigration, mass immigration. It's not just Britain, it's the entire West.
Constitutional reform is the number one issue in the UK.
Islam and birth rates.
Remigration is needed if we want to save the West.
That our governments do not see us as being the legitimate owners of our countries.
Erasing of our identity, i.e. our culture.
People just aren't talking in general at the minute.
As Charlie Kirk said,
When people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
The Islamization of the West is definitely the biggest threat.
I'm a father of 3 kids, that's why I'm here today.
I would say child rape.
Neo-Marxist, neo-communist ideologies that put priority on all these so-called oppressed classes. But certainly the biggest threat to our kids is this. Gender ideology.
Mass immigration has become the Trojan horse of Islam, and Islam is the biggest threat to Europe and to European civilization. Look, the Quran is a license to kill.
I do not want my granddaughter to ask me in 20 or 30 years, what have you done when this madness started? Why didn't you stop it? I will stop it. We will all stop this bullshit. It's time for normality, and this is what we are fighting for normality.
The woke mind virus and Islamism.
what's the solution?
Deport them all. Just deport them.
What's the single greatest threat to the Western civilization? I'm here with January 6th prisoner, Jake Lang. You were in prison for 4 years and 6 days. You've just received a presidential pardon. You're a free man.
Yes.
You're here at the United Kingdom rally. I'm asking everyone the same question. What's the single biggest threat facing the United Kingdom today? And more broadly, what's the single biggest threat the West is facing?
Islamic invasion. They do not match our culture. We have different cultures, God bless them, but stay in your homelands. We cannot be replaced. And the forefather, our lands here, that people have fought and bled for thousands of years, and now without a single shot fired, we're being overtaken. And that has been their plan for many years, and now we're seeing it come to fruition, and that's part of what the free speech is about. In America, we can say this. In United Kingdom, I got to get out of here pretty quick. I'll probably get arrested just for even mentioning this right now. So that's what the essence of this Freedom of Speech Festival is, to speak about the issues that they want to silence.
Tell me about the comparisons between Islamists arriving in Western Europe and Islamists arriving in the US. We're seeing very concerning things, especially in places like Minneapolis, that are being overrun by Somalis. But we also have people like Omar Fateh now, who's been nominated to be the mayor of Minneapolis, right?
Yes, and now we even have Mandami, the greatest city in the world. New York City has fallen. London has fallen. These are not people that can integrate into our societies so easily. Once they come, they start to take over, and they change the language, the dress, the religion, the culture, the food, everything. And so we have a duty to our forefathers to protect our homelands, and that's really why I'm here today, because America, we come from you guys. We come from the UK. This is our natural bloodline, and so I'm here as a January 6th political prisoner saying the freedom that we fought for, that was taken from me for 4 years, is so precious. Britons, stand up and fight. Even if you have to go to prison, even if you have to do 12 days without eating, hunger strikes, we've done it all in prison, and we understand freedom isn't free, and this country here is one of the beacons of hope in the world. If we lose London, if we lose Britain, we will lose the world.
What's the solution? How can we solve the problem of the mass arrival of Islamists on our shores?
Well, we need to get vocal. We need to get loud so that we can change the political climate. We need leaders, elected officials that have the same sentiment as the people here, and that they're going to pass laws, that they're going to set regulations forth that basically say no more boats, and anybody that's here needs to be deported immediately. Mass deportations, remigration now. Remigration now! Remigration now!
I'm here with Ben Habib. Ben, what's the single biggest threat the UK is facing right now?
The biggest threat is the illiberal global order that seeks to stamp its knee on the British neck and make us practice policies which are so clearly detrimental to our own national interests and the people in this country.
What are examples of policies? What are some of the policies that you're talking about?
That people are perpetrating against the British people? Oh, well, they're manifold. I mean, I think the worst one, perhaps, is this belief, correct belief in its foundational setup, that all of humanity is equal. But in the pursuit of promoting the equality of humanity, we've somehow got ourselves into a position where we don't recognise that British citizens are actually the ones who should have the privileges of being British. And so in the Human Rights Act, we've taken the body of the European Convention into the Human Rights Act, and we've made it part of British law. We've effectively set aside what it means to be a British citizen. And that's why we have this very peculiar situation, Stefan, where we have mass migration coming into the country. And seemingly our politicians don't seem to care about it because they are hijacked by the notion that all of humanity is equal.
And all people are interchangeable.
All people are interchangeable. And the other thing, the more sinister thing that's going on is because they believe in governance through this global order, actually, it's not helpful for them, for people to feel strongly patriotic or have a national feeling, because they stand in opposition to the global good. And mass migration is therefore, in my view, being used as a tool through which to get rid of national identity. And you, of course, will appreciate this more than we will, because we were never stupid enough to join the Schengen zone. You know that the Schengen zone is an absurdity, that the minute you get into Italy from North Africa, you can go wherever the hell you want. It's very, very lucky that Poland has somehow held its own so far. You know, I go to Warsaw, as you know, quite a lot, and Warsaw has not been taken over in the way that London has been taken over. But it's coming. Unless Poland sorts it. I know Poland is much braver than we are, but
not necessarily so. I mean, just to bounce back on one thing you said, transgenderism and transnationalism make the sort of same mistake, whereby those who believe in transgenders believe that if anyone can be a woman, no one is a woman. If anyone can be English, then fundamentally no one is English.
You're absolutely right.
And it's a very strange situation. It's a very strange position to be in. And also, the other interesting thing you're an interesting case, Ben, because obviously you're half ethnically.
Pakistani, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so my dad's Pakistani, my mum's English. Mum was born in Isleworth near Heathrow Airport,
sure.
Which was an RAF base in those days. And my mother's grandfather was a vicar. My grandfather fought in World War I. And even though I was born in Karachi, I went to the Karachi Grammar School, which is a school set up by the British in Pakistan. And we went to church, we celebrated Easter, we celebrated Christmas and so on. And so I was brought up by my mother's Christianity, and she's a very Christian lady, actually.
Do you feel Pakistani?
I'm proud of my Pakistani heritage, but I am British through and through. You know, I don't know, you're probably too young, Stefan, and this is perhaps too frivolous an example, but when I was at school, we used to read something called a Commando mag, little black and white magazines, which was basically all about Englanders defeating Germans. And so I grew up I grew up with a very strong sense of us being on the right side of history, that the Union flag representing everything that's good in the world, and I was taught history. The period that I studied at school was 19th century British history. I was taught late 18th and 19th century British history. I was taught that history through a very proud prism. I was proud of what we did. We did phenomenal things as a country, and now we're told to be ashamed of all of that. So, to answer your question in short, and the other thing I should say, as a child in Pakistan, it was post-imperial India that I was effectively brought up in, and the tailwinds of post-imperial India were still there. It was a phenomenal place, Karachi, when I was a child. Very, very different now. So I feel totally British. I love this country. This is my country. It goes through my veins. I may be brown, and that gives me the cover to say some things you can't say, but...
I'm here with Dan Wooton. Dan, what's the single biggest threat facing the UK today?
Oh my goodness. Can I pick 10? No,
Yes,
I mean,
go for
no. In all seriousness, to me, the single biggest threat to the United Kingdom is the threat to free speech. We are about to see the government introduce an Islamophobia law. Just think about that for one moment. That would have sent Charlie Kirk to prison. So it's all well and good, our Prime Minister, talking about the fact that it's important to have these discussions and free speech. Well, he's a lying bastard.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, under these regulations, Charlie Kirk would have been in prison in the United Kingdom. So, of course, there are lots of threats, but to me, as a free speech absolutist, it all comes down to that one thing, because they know they're losing. They know they're losing. They're losing the country. We're going to see later today just to what extent. So, what happens when they know they've lost? Censorship, authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and potentially even political violence. So it's a pretty chilling time here in the United Kingdom, living here, broadcasting here. It's pretty scary.
What do you think are some of the solutions to the free speech crackdown? How can citizens, how can journalists, how can activists, how can other politicians solve this?
So we have to operate en masse, and we have to operate without fear, because if all of us are here, if all of us are tweeting, they cannot lock all of us up, can they? But the other thing...
Let's hope.
Yeah, I mean, they may well try. The other thing that I always lean into is really actually exposing the hypocrisy of what those on the left, and actually, I've been saying all week, the true evil and the true mental illness of the left, and I really do mean that. I mean, the reaction that we've seen to the death of Charlie Kirk shows that those two very foul personality traits run through the hard left. We've seen the Oxford Union president, who was defeated on stage by Charlie Kirk, celebrating the fact that he was shot. What's so interesting to me, and as a free speech absolutist, this is the difficult one, because I don't necessarily...
I was about to challenge you on that, actually.
Yeah, because I don't join the sort of cancel culture mob. That's not what I'm about. I'm not waving my pitchfork in that he should lose his job. But what I always try and do in these situations is call out the hypocrisy. So, for example, when Lawrence Fox made a comment on my former GB News show about not wanting to shag a particular journalist, it led the mainstream media here. They forced us out of our jobs. They forced GB News to become cucked and cowered by what happened. Now, that reaction was about 100 times as extreme to the reaction of the Oxford Union president, or incoming Oxford Union president, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, just because Lawrence Fox said he didn't want to shag someone. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So I think we have to be careful not to become what the left is, but I absolutely think we can call out the sick hypocrisy and the sick evil that runs through the hard left in this country.
What's the single greatest threat to the UK and to the West more broadly right now?
It would be divisiveness. This concept that we can demoralize our opposition as a form of substitution to civil discourse.
Tell me more about that. That's a very unique answer. No one said that yet.
So both on the left and the right, you see as almost a colloquialism, he's a fascist and he's a communist.
Yeah.
Now, typically with protesters, they're quite ignorant about political philosophies. So, for example, I don't generally believe a lot of these people here understand what communism is.
Of course.
And a lot of these people here don't even understand conservatism. So
Correct.
There needs to be this common understanding, and it's a very Christian understanding that we're all made in the image of God and that there's a common decency to us, and we shouldn't be chasing each other on trains and beating each other up after protests, which is a common tactic by our Antifa friends over there. And if we have this civil discourse and common understanding, we can then kind of achieve this progressive political narrative where instead of trying to refute ideas, we try to build on each other's.
How do we bring that about? How do we make this happen?
I think there needs to be a turning point. I think ultimately, it's ironic. So on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, he died in a society that wouldn't debate with him. Now they are debating his death. So the man is now receiving civil discourse after his life passed away, and his entire life was spent doing that. Now, of course, there are people on the left mocking his death, but there are genuine discussions on how ultimately we can stop events like Charlie Kirk's. Even the President of the United States, he suggested that people demoralizing Charlie as a fascist is one of the contributing factors towards his assassination. So turning points, that is how we introduce civil discourse.
To bounce back on what you're saying, one of the problems that we have is, as we've become multicultural, and as we've had, the West used to be fully based and built on Christian values, ideas, and on people being mostly religious, which meant that when you had an argument with someone, it was within a philosophical framework that was shared by everyone. So debates in a culture which shares a main philosophy, in this case, Christian values and Christian culture, was much easier than in one, for example, where you have on one hand of the debate, you have a Christian, on the other you have a moral relativist, on the other you have a Muslim, and on the other hand you have a Hindu, right? Where suddenly all of these people are operating on very different frameworks, which makes the possibility of discussion much harder. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so Christianity historically, just because we had schisms, councils convened, you were allowed to be self-critical, right? Like, Christianity is not new to being critical of its religion. Now, I come from a time of doing Speaker's Corner debates, and all I can tell you is most religions have the ideology of cavemen. They literally have no critical thinking skills whatsoever. So I think the way that we also engage in civil discourse is by identifying that ideas are intellectually dead. If we identify that, we can then decouple people from believing in that, and we can then go back to an ecosystem which allows for it.
Biggest threat to the West, and specifically the UK right now?
Islam.
Tell me more.
I know you're going to say Islamism or radical Islam or extremism. I'm going to say Islam.
Okay.
Because, so there is a distinction to be made between different religions, right? You can be a Christian, you can be a Hindu, you can be a Buddhist. I prefer that you be a Christian because Christianity is awesome and is true. However, with Islam, there is a big difference here. With Islam, it is not simply a religion like other religions. It is not simply something that is a relationship between believers and God or the divine. It is a political system that comes with a lot of bad things attached. I'm completely fine with leaving Islam in Islamic countries where Islam belongs. I'm not fine with having massive numbers of Islam come into Western nations and play with the demographics and screw things up here. Western nations are great because they are not Islamic nations. It's because they are Western nations, because they are Christian nations. If you bring Islam into the equation, you will turn Western nations and Christian nations into whatever those Islamic nations are from which people flee to come to the West. It's not the other way around. People come from the Islamic world and flee to the West, where they are...
Can I give you one counterpoint?
Yes.
One counterpoint. We will debate this in a longer video, but this is a short format. Redman, what about the UAE? Multiple millionaires, thousands of millionaires have fled to the United Kingdom over tax policies here. Many of them have ended up in the United Arab Emirates, which by all metrics appears to be an enlightened Muslim country.
So here's the thing with the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates is not the way it is because it is a Muslim country or an Islamic country. It is so fundamentally there is the issue of oil, which oil and business, which makes people rich over there. And then once you have a rich country, you want to preserve it by not messing it up with Islamic measures, for example. If the UAE chose to pursue the path of Afghanistan or of Pakistan or other places and went toward, using their riches for Islam and Islamization, it wouldn't be where it is right now. It would become very quickly messed up. The UAE, the leaders of the UAE are smart, and they realize that you need to have something more functional, something better to keep this country that you have good They are good. They are currently good. They are currently a place for rich people and good people to go and live, because they replace Islamic values with more functional values, which they uphold so that rich people can go and live there. There's also bad stuff about the UAE. If I went to the UAE as an ex-Muslim and criticized Islam or just talked about my past, for example, I would end up in prison in the UAE. So as an ex-Muslim who's also critical of Islam, I am a little bit restricted and limited in terms of the good stuff that I can say about the UAE. However, the UAE and also to an extent Saudi Arabia right now are smart in a way that they adopt un-Islamic, non-Islamic, and you could even say anti-Islamic or counter-Islamic ideas in order to make their countries flourish, which is also why the radical Muslims who want to go back to Islam don't like where the UAE is going and where the UAE has gone. And the UAE doesn't like the religious Muslims, because they know that they are a threat to what they have established. So the counterpoint can be simply explained and can simply be responded to by saying the UAE is not great because it is an Islamic nation. It is great because it is a nation that has replaced Islamic values with un-Islamic values.
Would you ban Islam in the West?
Good question. I want to say no, because I believe that that one thing that makes the West great is equality and liberty and freedom of religion, freedom for all. The issue is that with Islam, so these Western ideals were formed with Western people in mind, with good people who appreciate these ideas. If you now bring a lot of people into these nations that want to subvert and change these ideals, you are directly threatening the freedom of religion and all that. So I am sometimes, in all honesty, a little bit conflicted about that whole question. I want to say I don't want to ban any religion. However, I would like to see a little bit of a counter measure to the spread of Islam in Western nations.
Quick question. What's the single biggest threat to the United Kingdom today?
Censorship. Because if we're not allowed to learn what's really going on, we can't make the right decisions. And in fact, we could be led in the wrong direction. The regime media has failed, so citizen journalists are needed to fill the gap. That's why they want to stop Elon Musk, because he has empowered millions of ordinary people.
Looking at it from across the ocean, what does the UK look like to someone in Canada?
We've always looked up to the United Kingdom because we came from the United Kingdom and from France. And so to see the United Kingdom abandon some of its traditions of equal justice before the law, freedom of speech, I'm worried, because I see what happens in the UK today could happen to Canada in 5 years. It's like a dystopian time machine. So all the issues the UK is going through, censorship, mass immigration, the Islamification of society, these are things that is happening in Canada too. I want to learn from the UK to prevent those same problems in Canada and elsewhere.
How can this be stopped? How do you think, what's the antidote to censorship? What would you advise the UK to do?
Well, free speech is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And I'm delighted to see today dozens of citizen journalists stepping up. That's a fairly new phenomenon. 10 years ago, there was very few.
There were very few. You were one of them.
That's right. And Tommy himself, when he was censored on social media, it really cut him off from millions of followers. Now that he's back, he can counter the official regime narratives. And I'm not saying that anyone else on the other side should be censored. Let's have a marketplace of ideas. I believe in that. And that's actually a deeply British idea.
What's the single biggest problem facing the UK and the West more broadly?
In the UK, I can tell the single biggest problem. You have two big problems, the freedom of speech and the migrant crisis that's going on. In America, we had a huge migrant crisis. It was so insane at the amount of people we were letting just flow right into our country, just like that is going on here. Thanks to President Trump, we put a stop to that. I believe if President Trump wasn't elected, we would be in the path that you guys are going. More people coming in, freedom of speech being non-existent as it is here. I just talked to a lady over here and she said that she went into a doctor's office, and there were so many people in this doctor's office, including illegal immigrants, and she spoke out, and she said they file a public claim against her, and she could actually face legal charges and be put in jail for speaking out in a doctor's office about her anger about not being able to be seen. She said she's actually afraid to come here today, but she's not going to just stand by and watch this happen to her country, because it's your country. And if you stand by and do nothing, it will continue to fall. So it takes something like this. It takes people to stand up for your country not to fall. It's your country. Your forefathers fought for this country. And we're not against people having a good life, because we want people to have
But not at our expense. Not at our expense.
No, because we are the ones paying for all of this. Your tax dollars, my tax dollars, all of our tax dollars are going towards funding the migrant crisis. And the exact same thing that's happening here was happening in the United States. And it took a good president, someone who truly cares about their country, to turn the whole thing around. And we did it. Like, that border is secure. It's closed. No one.
You've seen it.
Oh, I've seen it. I saw it when it was wide open and it was flowing. I saw the cartel dropping people off, people from all over our country just walking into America. I've been to the border again, and now nobody is coming in. And even the Border Patrol will talk to you. Before, when President Biden was the president, Border Patrol would not talk to you. They were told they cannot talk to anyone. Now they can talk to you. They're open about it, and they say, we are so grateful we can actually do our job here in America and protect our country. And that's what needs to happen here.
You're an American. You have the First Amendment. What's it like as an American who, so used to complete freedom of speech, to see what's happening, not just in the UK, but Western Europe more broadly? What's it like from your, because the First Amendment from a Western European perspective is madness, right? Like, we're so not used to that level of being able to say literally whatever you want. Tell me about what it's like from your perspective to look into our little world.
Well, when I came here last year for this rally and we were speaking to people, I felt like people were speaking in code, and I felt like it was during World War II, where people were speaking in code because they were afraid of their message being out.
Wow.
And I feel that is still how it is here too. It's like people don't dare to express what's going to be happening because they're afraid the police will come and pick them up. And to me, that was shocking when I came here last year at that point and heard they were afraid to talk. People didn't want to talk on camera, or it was literally code that they were speaking in because they were afraid of their voices being heard. And the same thing is going on. A year later, nothing's changed, and it's probably gotten a whole lot worse.
What's the single biggest threat to the United Kingdom today?
I see it as radical Islam.
Tell me more. What does that mean?
There is a minority of bigots who have silenced the moderate Islamic people and the Muslims in this country. They are, we have the extremist tail wagging the moderate dog, and they will never ever give up until they have turned Britain into a caliphate, Islamic caliphate.
So you're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, you're talking about the radical imams preaching in certain mosques in London and around the UK. These are the people you're talking about?
Indeed, yeah. The Muslim Brotherhood is thought to be ultimately behind most of the Islamic terrorism that goes on in the world. I think 95 out of 100 worst terrorists in the world are all Sunni Islamic, mostly Sunni Islamic terrorist groups. They're all inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood. It's been going since, I think, 1928, and they have wreaked havoc.
Correct, and launched in Egypt first, and then it's spread around the world.
Exactly, yeah. And the Muslim Brotherhood is the inspiration for Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda.
Why has it not been designated a terror organization?
Well, funny enough, I've actually researched this. Back in 2016, the Home Affairs Select Committee considered banning the Muslim Brotherhood, but because they weren't overtly violent, they thought it was inappropriate to ban them. And that's stayed now for 8 years. I actually genuinely researched it. So yeah. But I think Nigel Farage, as reformers, promised to ban him should he be elected. And so, I really do wish he will. There's groups like the Muslim Council of Britain. They are thought to be Muslim Brotherhood affiliated. Sue me if I'm wrong. In fact, again, in 2015, because it was discovered they did have links with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Parliament banned the Muslim Council of Britain from attending anything at Parliament.
How does the UK and the West more broadly counteract the radical Islamist threat, Dave?
First of all, they've got to turn the tap off to immigration. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't care. You might have the best sob story. There are some people who all the migrants are coming via the channel. They throw their documents in the sea. If I was a homosexual in Syria, or a Christian in Egypt, I'll be bringing you my crosses. I'll be showing you my Christian birth certificate in a Coptic church. I couldn't show you enough documentation to get in the bloody place, Yeah. And I think these Pakistani Christians are a group of people, and of the Syrian Christians, the Druze and the Alawites also have a case for asylum in this country. But we don't. But we let all the extremist Muslims in. So the first thing we'll do is stop all immigration, apart from the most obvious cases where people can document themselves. The second thing is we have to expel every single non-British born person from this country who is involved in anything radical or extremist. All those people that go out on a Saturday afternoon, singing. I asked a policeman back in November 2023 if I said "gas the Jews," would you arrest me for that? He said, yes, I would. If I said free Palestine from the river to the sea, would you arrest me for that? No. I said, you do know they mean the same thing. Don't know about that. Morons. Every Saturday afternoon, we have halls, hundreds of thousands of people saying the equivalent of "gas the Jews." We saw even after the atrocities of the 7th of October, there were Hamas people saying we want to do this again and again and again, and until they completely wipe out the Israelis. And it's not, the people who will get it will not only be the Israelis, it will also be the Israeli Christians, the Druze, and other denominations, and the Muslims, yeah, of course,
and the Israeli Muslims,
yeah,
of course. I'm here with Courtney and Stuart. Courtney, Stuart, what do you think is the single greatest threat the UK faces today?
To be honest, I think it's legal immigration. I think it's bad for girls, just kids in general, to be scared to go to school, people to be scared to walk the streets because they're roaming the streets and they're trying to harm us and all the kids. I think being scared to walk alone at night or in day is just terrible. I'm scared I might get raped, kidnapped, anything.
Do you feel this yourself when you go to school here? Or when you go out with your friends? Is this something that you live with on a daily basis?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I can't leave the house so my parents track my phone. My parents have to know where I am at all times. I have to ring them. And when walking alone, we're always scared that someone might be following us. Someone might pop out or something. It's like danger almost everywhere.
Stuart, you've done a great job raising your daughter, sir.
Thank you.
What do you think is the threat?
That says everything that we need to know about the threat that's there today. Leftism, okay? The leftism, the poles have shifted. They've shifted. We can see now where the fascists really are, okay? Charlie Kirk was murdered, okay, because he had a different opinion, okay? For me, the biggest threat right now is that leftist, they're the fascists, the agenda, the woke agendas they're pushing on schools is disgusting. This man was one of the most peaceful men, okay? All he ever did was speak to people, okay? Yeah. He just debated people, okay? They didn't like his opinion, and they murdered him for it.
Any advice on raising a daughter the way you did?
Always tell your children to question, okay? And listen to your children as well, okay? So anybody can say this is what you should do, and this is what, how you should be, you should raise yourself, and these are the ideologies that you should live to. But listen to your children as well. They've got voices, okay? They tell you, and you work together, and raise patriots, raise children that are proud of their country, because this is the next generation. If we teach our children now to don't worry about the flag, don't worry about your history, it's everything else, all these other cultures and their histories, and they forget their own. And before you know it, we've got this 3-4 generations' time, children who just don't care anymore. And everything, thousands of years before our countries have done, it's gone.
Gone.
It's gone. This is the future. Invest in the future.
Thank you so much. Paul, what's the single biggest threat to the UK?
I think, as things stand, there's two threats, in my opinion. Demographic takeover due to mass immigration and the encroachment of tyranny in every aspect of our society. This is why I've come today. I've never come to Tommy Robinson rallies. He's his own man, I'm my own man. We've got our separate movements. But I've come today because, we're looking at the Online Safety Act. We're looking at, the government has recently forced Apple to get rid of encryption. It's just in so many different ways. All of our civil liberties are being chipped away. All of our freedom being chipped away. Our freedom of speech, everything's being chipped away. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And if we don't make a stand now and make them think twice, and that's why I've come today, and that's why I've encouraged all of my supporters today to come here, because if Keir Starmer is briefed later that there was 1 million people outside his office, outside his home, he might think twice that if he goes any further, he'll have a big rebellion on his hand. And that's why I've come here today, because this is very important. This is not about me or Tommy Robinson or anyone else. This is about freedom of speech in Britain, and that affects everyone, especially us, the ones that are involved in the patriotic struggle.
You mentioned demographic replacement. Tell me more about what's happening in the UK in terms of demographics.
Ever since 1948, with the Empire Windrush docked at Tilbury down the road, we've just had wave after wave, just endless open borders, mass immigration into this country. And we've been reasonable and tolerant and stiff-lipped about it all. But we're at the point now where we're a minority in London, we're a minority in Leicester, in Birmingham, in so many other towns and cities. We're the minority. And if you just play the tape forward, then we are going to be a minority across the whole of the United Kingdom in 25 years' time. And that's the replacement of our people. There'll be no way back. We're past the point of no return. There's no way you can undo that, because we'd be outnumbered and outvoted at that point. So we're in the last chance saloon as a nation. It's not about being racist or any extremist. It's just no other country in the world would be expected to give up their sovereign land to foreigners. No one else would do it. It's common sense that we want. We just want common sense. So if things carry on, we're going to be a minority, and we'll end up like the whites of South Africa, facing slaughter and atrocity every single day, and we'll be helpless because we'll be outnumbered.
With Alexandra Lavoie from the Rebel News. Alex, what's the single greatest threat to the UK today?
For sure, it's immigration, mass immigration. We have people coming in that are legal or illegal. I'm for illegal immigration. They are contributing. They are bringing goods for the country. But when we look at, we have a massive amount of people who are crossing illegally in all kinds of ways, do not integrate, bringing all their conflicts from their own country. And now we are seeing also sleeper cells, people who don't want goods for our countries. So we are seeing it in all Western countries. And I think as of right now, Canada is looking closely at the UK because we know what is coming to us soon if we are not doing anything. And we need to act. We need to do something. And unfortunately, there is politicians who are in powers right now who are not listening to the people, and I hope that will change soon.
All right, Jerry Mannarino, what's the single greatest threat that the West is facing right now?
The single greatest threat is inaction of people like you and me, who we need to actually start to non-violently, because we always have to preface it like that, we have to make sure that our voices are heard and that we are not afraid to speak up and come out to stuff like this. I had friends who live in London, and I said, hey, are you coming to Tommy's thing? I would love to, I agree, but I'm afraid. If you're afraid, then you're going to be part of the carnage when everything goes down from these horrible people who want to basically extinguish our ideas, and by definition, us as well. We saw what happened with Charlie Kirk. They are coming for everything, and we have got to make sure that we stand strong so we don't end up, being run over in this spiritual war that's going on right now.
You think that more people than just Charlie are a threat, are at risk?
I think anybody who's willing to speak up is actually at risk right now, because the far left is radicalized. They spend all their time, their leaders tell them, oh, everybody that disagrees with you, everybody that supports Trump is a Nazi, is a fascist. if you're the least bit off in the brain, you could do anything to these people because you're literally saving the world in their minds.
What do you think is one of the solutions to this specific problem? So a lot of people have said very different things. It's very interesting to hear this cross-section of what people think is the greatest threat.
Yeah.
How do we solve this in action? What can be done?
We have to band together, number one. We actually have to make everyone have awkward conversations with their friends and start to make them understand the threat we face. The very democracies that we have, the actual freedom of speech that we have, they don't realize how much you take for granted until you live in a place where it doesn't exist, or until you live in a place like the UK where they slowly are taking it away piece by piece. They have to understand what's going on, and look, if they can't wake up, I don't know what to tell you. You got to really try hard because we're coming to a time where there's a time for choosing.
What's the single biggest threat the UK is facing today?
Free speech, of course, being the pivotal, because you can't have anything else if you aren't allowed to talk about it. But I would say Islamism is probably the one that I'd be most concerned about when I hear about grooming gangs and rising violence, and the fact that it's not just happening, but politicians, media, and the general public don't seem to know or don't seem to care. That concerns me on a pretty big level.
Tell me more about the threat of Islamism in the UK and in Western Europe more broadly, especially from your Canadian perspective.
So in Canada, we haven't reached this point yet, and I've been saying for years, as many have, that Tommy is the canary in the coal mine, and we need to be listening to him. So what we're seeing is just a lack of understanding or a lack of wanting to assimilate into the value system of what are Christian nations. And people often debate that these are not Christian nations because they're so secular, which is true, but everything we have, our parliament, our laws, everything is built around Judeo-Christian heritage. That's the fact. That's everything you look around, everything we have that these secular people don't want to accept, it's all because of that. And when you look at the way that places that are run by theocratic countries in the Middle East it's not the same. They don't want the same things. And it doesn't mean that people who are fleeing those countries aren't legitimately finding, rest and respite in these Western countries. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about those that wish to change these free Western nations into what they fled or into what people are fleeing. And we are seeing that in remarkable ways across Parliament, especially with the infiltration political Islam into the UK, and we're slowly starting to see it creep, of course, into the US, into Canada. That's my concern. It's just this shift in ideology and culture. It's not about color, it's not about the person, it's about ideas, it's about freedom of speech, it's about women's rights. It blows my mind that me as an ex-leftist, coming in, seeing how feminists are standing up about misogyny, and yet you have FGM happening all over the world. You have grooming gangs happening in the UK, and you're never supposed to question a woman who's a victim, and yet these women get nothing. No one cares because it's not politically correct, it's dangerous to say. It's mind-blowing, honestly. So,
what are some of the solutions that you would like to see to the problems that you've highlighted?
Well, immigration is seemingly an obvious one, and yet I have to say it. Vet your immigrants. I don't understand why this is such a controversial comment. You need to be very cautious of checking the backgrounds of each person that comes in so that you know that they are appreciative of where they've come to as opposed to wanting to change it to where they've come from. So that's the first one. And I understand Sammy Woodhouse is doing a lot of work on the political side of things for policies when it comes to grooming gangs. But the other thing is somehow we have to get more media out there playing ball. And I don't know how you change I don't know how you shift the culture to make people care. I don't know how you shift a corrupt, lying media. So I don't know the answer on the sort of minute level, but something has to start. And if we don't change the culture, if we don't stand up as regular people, then nothing will ever change. You need to have that critical mass of people actually caring and putting pressure on politicians, on the media, and on the police, and on judges, and everything else.
What's the single biggest threat facing the UK?
Goodness, I mean, there's a lot of threats facing the UK, but I'd say people choosing to self-censor, yes. That's probably the biggest problem.
Tell me more about that.
Well, we're being bullied to be quiet and to not stand up for ourselves, especially as women. We've been completely neglected by the government, ignored in all manners. And yeah, I think women, unfortunately, it's not in our nature to be loud and obnoxious, but we have to when it comes to things like the rape gang. Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some of the solutions to this threat of self-censorship? How can you inspire people to stop self-censoring?
Look at America. America has this thing called the Constitution, and it's powerful and it protects their free speech. And I know America is different, the UK doesn't have a constitution, but it's about the attitude, and things can change, and we could maybe even get a constitution here if we really wanted to. But it starts with the people's voices, so you just have to be brave and understand, yes, you're probably going to be cancelled and fired and your friends are going to leave you, but are you just going to stay silent and let this happen? Pretty weak, if you ask me.
Thank you so much, Jade. That was great. Here with Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, what's the single biggest threat facing the UK right now?
I think it's complacency, and whatever the threat is, the important thing is that people actually acknowledge it and notice it and then do something about it. And in my mind, there is a climate crisis, but it's a crisis of hatred and it's a crisis of denial. And the temperature is indeed rising, and it's rising in a way that means that people do need to act, because this is a man-made crisis. People need to make sure that they change their behaviours, they drop the complacency, and they acknowledge the problems we have, however difficult and awkward they are. And indeed, that seems to be what these people gathering here today are trying to say and do. The question is whether politicians and those in authority have the right answers and can in some way row this back so that the people feel listened to.
It's actually, I think, the most interesting answer I've heard so far. It's a really good one. How can you solve a problem? Because there's this sort of feeling that we're in an era of managed decline. That, you know, the Cold War is won, it's the end of history, hooray, the West is, you know, at its most dominant. Then we're sort of defeated by our own victory. How do we come out of this can you even turn that around? Is that doable?
Well, I think this complacency is a result of just that. You know, people my age below grew up in a society where we thought that all of these problems were historic, even anti-Jewish hatred, anti-Semitism. People assumed it was historic. They knew the stories of the Holocaust. I think that we had the luxury of not experiencing the challenges that we do today. And so that's why complacency has set in, because people felt that these were all automatic rights. But freedom, the freedom that we enjoy, is never free. And people from societies and countries where that has been challenged already, where they've had to flee, are here often to tell us, to warn us that actually we need to do something before we end up in the same position as them. And that's why I think complacency is really the key, because if we can tackle the complacency, then we can start collectively to find those solutions, and they won't be easy. They require hard work, they require a fight, whether it's unfortunately a fight in a war in some cases, but ideally it can be a fight of opinions and ideologies, and a civilized fight through civilized processes. And you know, even that is being challenged every day when we see killings like Charlie Kirk, someone who people may not have agreed with, but he is somebody that has had a desire to debate and to an intellectual discussion, and if that ends up in violence, again, we can't be complacent about that sort of thing going on in our societies.
It brings me back to that aphorism that everyone knows at this point. Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. We're somewhere in that cycle. Jonathan, thank you so much. So we also have some of our French allies and comrades and intellectual friends. Monsieur Zemmour is one of France's leading intellectuals. Eric, quel plaisir de vous voir. Je vous pose juste une question, la même que j'ai posée à tout le monde. Quel est le plus gros problème auquel l'Occident fait face aujourd'hui?
C'est évidemment le grand remplacement, c'est-à-dire le remplacement de population de tous les peuples européens par des peuples venus du Sud, pour la plupart de culture musulmane, et qui imposent leurs mœurs et leurs traditions et leur mode de vie à la place des peuples européens, et qui arrivent de plus en plus nombreux. Et si les peuples européens ne se révoltent pas contre cette invasion, ils vont être minoritaires sur leur propre sol.
Les médias mainstream appellent ça une théorie de complot. Ils disent que c'est pas vrai, qu'il n'y a pas de grand remplacement, que c'est raciste.
Je ne dis pas qu'il y a un complot, je dis que c'est un fait, voilà, c'est factuel. Alors en plus, là où effectivement il y a des gouvernements comme le gouvernement anglais, mais aussi le gouvernement français, qui favorisent au nom des principes de droit c'est cette invasion. Et c'est tout. Mais il n'y a pas de complot, on ne dit pas on va remplacer le peuple français ou le peuple anglais. Mais il y a des faits, c'est-à-dire que il y a des millions de gens qui sont venus de l'autre côté de la Méditerranée. Des millions. Bah, bien sûr. Et deux, il y a des gouvernements français et anglais qui favorisent cette arrivée. Voilà, c'est tout.
qu'est-ce que l'Occident peut faire pour contrer ça? Si vous preniez pouvoir demain, que feriez-vous, Eric?
C'est très simple, il faut arrêter d'abord l'immigration, je dis bien arrêter, l'immigration zéro, et même commencer la remigration. C'est ce que fait Trump aux États-Unis. En 6 mois, il y a 1,5 million d'immigrés, d'étrangers de moins aux États-Unis que quand il est arrivé. Comme quoi c'est possible. Donc il faut non seulement arrêter les flux, et commencer à renvoyer tous ceux dont on ne veut plus, c'est-à-dire les chômeurs, les délinquants, les criminels, etc.
Merci, Eric.
Je vous en prie.
I'm here with Nick Sherley. Nick, what's the single biggest issue facing the UK, and more broadly, because you're American, the West?
Right now, mass immigration, and here in the United Kingdom specifically, is freedom of speech.
You have been around the world. Your content's insane. I love it. I'm a big fan. Tell me more about some of the things you've seen and how mass immigration is changing places that you know.
The problem isn't necessarily the migrants. It's the fact that they don't want to assimilate. So I guess it is the migrants. So the problem is that these people are coming into countries and they don't want to assimilate. They don't want to become part of the culture. For instance, someone said, well, somebody from Islam would never marry a Christian here, and therefore they'll never assimilate, or there'll never be any sort of common ground here in the United Kingdom, specifically with the topic of immigration here. And you guys have, here in the United Kingdom, you guys have a lot of people coming from Muslim countries. In the United States, we have a lot of people that come from South America, Central America, and they share our similar beliefs, and it's not as bad. But here you're seeing that the cultures are completely being dismantled, and their people are having more children than the citizens of the United Kingdom. And those kids will then have more children, and something needs to change.
You talked about freedom of speech. You said freedom of speech is one of the challenges that the UK faces specifically. You're American. The Americans have the First Amendment. Tell me about why you're concerned about freedom of speech in the UK.
It's concerning due to the fact that people are not going to want to share their opinions as much. And Charlie Kirk even said, has recently just passed, and one of his quotes was that when there's no conversation, something along the lines of when there's no conversation.
When people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
Exactly, and you're going to see it here in the United Kingdom. Multiple people have said that civil war is inevitable at this point here in the United Kingdom, and there will be violence here on the streets eventually, if things do not change.
You have seen the inside of Sacot, the maximum security prison in El Salvador. You've been to El Salvador, that's being run with what the media calls an iron fist by Nayib Bukele. What do you think about Bukele's policies, and do you think that Western countries, be it America, be it England, be it other Western European countries, do you think these are policies that could be adopted in the West?
Besides Donald Trump, Nayib Bukele is the best president in the West. He's literally, when we say saved a country, he's literally saved and liberated an entire nation from gangs and from demonic powers. And so, yes, people should follow suit with what Nayib Bukele has done, and especially in South and especially in Latin America.
Avi, I've been asking everyone the same question. What's the single biggest threat the UK faces today?
Look, I'm not British. I wouldn't know. From watching Tommy Robinson, it's the demographic change is changing this country and making it worse and much more dangerous for the average Brit. All the other issues are compounding: cost of living, the failure of the infrastructure and all that. But I think it's immigration, mass immigration. It's not just Britain, it's the entire West. For all those reasons, but I think first and foremost, we're losing our identity, our culture, and our safety.
What are some of the things that mass migration does that makes a country worse?
Hey guys, you want to just take a look at the Free Palestine protests in the last 2 years? That's how it makes it worse. You have actual terrorist sympathisers and blatant supporters who have taken capital cities hostage globally, across the entire West. And the only way they got there was via mass migration.
You're half Israeli, half Australian. Tell me about mass migration from the perspective of an Israeli, of someone who's from a country that is surrounded by enemies, surrounded by people that want to wipe you off the face of planet Earth, that have repeatedly attacked your country. Tell me about what Israelis who see what's happening in the West, how they look at this situation.
Well, actually, I'll correct I'm a bigger mix than that. So my mum's Yemen Israeli, my dad's Russian Polish. They met in America.
Yeah.
And but my dad grew up in Australia, so his parents fled during the war. They met in Australia, and that's that story. And my children, they're half Chinese, like everything these days.
So tell me about from an Israeli
from a Jewish and an Israeli perspective. What was the question?
How do you see what's happening in the West, especially in terms of migration, especially in terms of mass migration from majority Muslim countries?
Well, just look at Australia. Look at Melbourne. The spate of attacks on the Jewish community in the name of anti-Zionism, whatever code the group wants to do. You know, if you look at the different groups that are targeting Jewish communities globally, you've got the far left, the Muslim community, and now also the growing kind of, they were this fringe right, but the growing far right. They're all united in one thing, and that's targeting the Jewish community. And the way that so the way the Islamists kind of legitimize it is using their friends on the far left. They're useful idiots. The way that the far right legitimize their positions is they go, hold on, don't worry about it. Look, even the left is saying it. We're all saying it. So the problem is actually just the Jews. And stemming from the mass migration is because it ends up being in a democracy. That is the downfall of democracy. It is a numbers game. The majority wins. And you see, as soon as the demographic changes in countries or in states or in cities, past a certain point, then that mob does get to rule. And they get to rule politicians by holding the voter base, and they get to dictate what the city and what the agenda is. And again, you can look the last 2 years, these people have gone with impunity. You see here, Tommy Robinson, they put so much drama over this one protest is done, yet actual violent protests on these same streets for the last 2 years barely get a mention in the mainstream media, at least not from the negative perspective that everybody's running this story from.
It's what Lee Kuan Yew said, the leader of Singapore. He said, in a multiracial democracy, people no longer vote with their economic interests. They vote according to their religion and to their race. And this is, I think, very much what we're seeing happen in the West in real time, which is absolutely incredible. What would be some of the policies that you would want to see implemented in Western countries if you were to become a political leader and take power? What would be some of the policies that you would implement to stop some of the issues that we've been discussing?
I think you'd start at migration. End mass migration. You can have migration, but quality over quantity. People that are going to integrate and give to the country, that are going to build the country up, not people that are going to come in, leech off the country, live off the tax, and then want to change the entire identity back to the country that they supposedly escaped from. That's the first thing. I think that'll fix a lot of the problems.
What would you say is the most pressing question right now in the UK?
Do you know something? The most pressing question actually is democratic deficit. Ugh. I know everybody thinks that's boring, and I know it sounds silly, but everything flows from the following thing. Tony Blair brought in a series of changes to this country that he called the stakeholder society. What it really was an end to democracy. It was a situation where whichever way you voted, there was all of these experts, and those experts would always govern things. And you know, in every field of our life, whether it be the Human Rights Act, whether it be immigration, whether it be climate change, whether it be taxation, whether it be education of children, whether it be the trans issue, and I can keep listing those things for the next 3 months, every single one of them is related to the fact that instead of having a real democracy, instead of the people down the road in the Palace of Westminster running things, instead we've got these committees, these quangos, these executive agencies, these non-governmental, quasi-governmental bodies. And so you are going to hate me for saying that constitutional reform is the number one issue in the UK. And I don't know whether every single man, woman and child in the street would say it's constitutional reform, but I guarantee you that is the important issue. Now, if you wanted to ask me what the second one was, the second one is going to be this. I have become convinced, and you know how people say, oh, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy theorist on this. I've become convinced that our enemies in places like Russia and China have started to undermine our democracy and undermine our system by using our own system against us. I am convinced that those refugees and fake migrants on the border between France and the UK are being coached by foreign intelligence agents. Now, I appreciate that it's not directly the KGB turning up and doing it. I appreciate it's not directly President Xi of China encouraging it. But I'm convinced that what we are seeing is a creeping Sinoization, less so Russization, but the Chinese are moving into our economics. They're moving into our public sphere, and I believe that a lot of the problems we've got are as a result of foreign intelligence infiltrating us. And we need, not just as Britain, but as Europe and as America and as the Anglosphere and as the free world, we need to start saying to ourselves, how do we build robust institutions to protect ourselves? God, I've just realised something. That's also constitutional reform, isn't it?
And here is the second question. What can be done about it? This democratic deficit, how do we fix it? What do people do?
Hey, let me tell you something. You work in Poland. You look at what Poland has done in terms of dealing with all these problems. You look at what little Moldova has done in terms of protecting itself. The long coup d'etat that Russia attempted against Moldova failed. We are good at standing up for freedom. We've made bad mistakes in the European Union, but what we've also done is we've also stood up for institutions when they should be stood up for. If we bring in a small number of reforms, Human Rights Act, we could do things like stopping legal aid, which is the financial payment for plaintiffs in cases, legal aid for foreigners, also returning our powers to our democratic institutions, we will be fine. And I want to just say to you, at Visegrad, I can't speak Polish.
You got it wrong.
Oh,
now we won one.
Okay, let me just say, Poland has led the way on defending freedom. And I will say one thing. Here's what Poland knows that Britain has been bad at learning. When you are in the centre of Europe, you know what it's like to be invaded. You know how a great culture can be destroyed by communism. You know how fascism can wipe out your intelligentsia. Poland knows what it's like to be beaten in a war. Britain doesn't understand that. And for a long time, that was a great strength. But at the moment, it's a great weakness. And I think the number one thing I want to say to you is we need to learn from Poland. And you are leading the way in teaching us, and I want to thank you as an institution for that.
Don, what's the single greatest threat to the UK and to the West more broadly?
Islam and birth rates. I think the two are tied together, actually.
Tell me about both and why they're tied together.
Well, white families are having birth at the rate of 1 kid to 3 or more for Muslim families. So with the mass immigration in Western countries right now that's uncontrolled, they're just coming in droves. They're having lots of children, and quite frankly, their birth rate is just overtaking us. And our government's not really doing much to stop it. They seem to be actually encouraging it rather than stopping it like they should be. Now, the problem with Islam in general is not so much Muslims. I don't have a problem with Muslims who want to come to your country legally. They want to assimilate. They want to adopt your culture. What I have a problem with is this mass influx of Muslims who come into countries and expect you to assimilate to their culture rather than vice versa. They form parallel societies and they don't want to integrate at all. So that's a big problem when you're trying to preserve your own culture. I mean, if you look around the globe, the percentage of just white people in the world has decreased from 36% to 9% in roughly the last 100 years. It's because our birth rate has fallen so much. So we need to preserve our culture. We don't have to hate other cultures or dislike other cultures simply because we want to preserve our own. So that's why I think that those two things are sort of linked when it comes to the problems in really Western countries, the UK and others. Now, right now, we're getting a reprieve in the United States because we elected an America First president who stopped. We had 10,000 immigrants per day coming across the border during the Joe Biden administration, and now we're down to 0, roughly, under the Trump. And it only took a few months to do it, right? So it just goes to show you, if you have a leader that's willing, it's very easy to do. But you just have to have those people in power who want to put your country first rather than other countries before your own.
Why do you think the birth rates have fallen so much in the West?
I think it's sort of by design with the government. I think there's been an influx of Marxism throughout the West, and the last several decades who've taken over in government and our education system. So not only are we putting them into our government positions of power, we're also putting them in our positions of education to influence our children and indoctrinate our children. And classic Marxist They don't want big, strong family units. They want the government to be your family. They want the government to be your God. They don't like religion. They don't, and like I said, they don't like the family unit. So they try as much as possible to split up the family unit. That's why we have so many kids, especially in America, who are raised by single-parent households. That number has decreased. In the 1960s was roughly 80% two-parent households. Now it's down to 25 or less today, just because. And it really leads to the degradation of society. When you don't have a family unit, you don't have a father figure in the home, and you don't have God in your family, it really leads to the degradation of a society, and in general, really.
What's the single greatest threat to the West right now?
Islam.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, they hate us. I don't want to say everyone who practices their religion hate us, but for the vast majority, they hate Christianity. They have no intention to assimilate to our culture, to our way of life, and they just want to take over for the vast majority. So that's the biggest threat we have as Christians and as a Western nation.
Tell me about some of the effects that Islam, according to you, has had on Western societies.
Well, starting by the fact that women are no longer safe on the streets because they believe in not respecting women, in raping women, in killing women. So I think that's the main concern that I have as a woman, our safety, and as a future mother, God willing, one day, for my future.
Inshallah.
So it's a safety in our streets. And of course, it's very sad to see Christianity decay so fast. I love Jesus Christ, I love our churches, I love our traditions, and this is very fast dying, so it really worries me.
What do you think the West should do to stop this specific threat? The threat of Islam, the threat of radical Islam, Islamism? What can be done?
Remigration, send them back. And maybe start having stronger values. Because if we go to their countries, we cannot go showing our hair. We have to assimilate to their culture, right? So make them assimilate to our culture if they have to stay here. But I think that remigration is needed if we want to save the West.
Carl Benjamin, what's the single greatest threat to the West right now?
I don't think there is one single greatest threat. I think there are many threats coming on all different dimensions. But honestly, it's mostly the fact that our governments do not see us as being the legitimate owners of our countries. They genuinely do not think that Wales belongs to the Welsh, that England belongs to the English, that Scotland belongs to the Scottish. And this is the same all over the West. The general attitude is that foreigners, strangers are just as valid and have just as valid a claim to your country as you do. And all of it flows from that.
When you say that to me, it sounds so insane. As in, it's mind-boggling, the fact that we're even discussing this.
You know that that's how they think. Know that's how they think.
So they believe the elite, the establishment has a fundamental belief that people are interchangeable. There's a sort of blank slate belief that's so obviously wrong from all of our, using their terminology, all of our lived experiences. How do you think we've reached a stage where the elites of some of the greatest countries on planet Earth have reached such an insane conclusion?
Well, it's full spectrum liberalism, frankly. In the late 90s and through the 2000s, that's the only legitimate ideology. And so it's been put into our laws, it's been put into our institutions, and it selects for people who believe and truly believe in the sort of purest view of liberalism. And so now we've got people who can't even comprehend. Like you saw Lewis Goodall on the news agents the other day after the shooting of Charlie Kirk, just going on about how Charlie Kirk's not a moderate, he's far right. It's like, no, you're just very far to the left, actually. Millions of people agree with Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk was a moderate.
Exactly right.
Charlie Kirk believed what? The USA is the greatest nation on planet Earth, the Constitution's the greatest document ever written, and free market capitalism takes more people out of poverty than any other economic system.
Completely standard, middle-of-the-road beliefs for any American conservative.
Sure.
And which got Trump elected by a huge margin. And yet Lewis Goodall is like, no, Charlie Kirk is a fringe extremist. It's like, no, that's you, Lewis. And that's why all of these people are here today. No one supports this. This is a revolt against the system itself. And everyone knows it. And that's why there's such a big tent with so many people who individually might disagree, but all understand it's us versus them.
The erasing of our identity, i.e. our culture.
Tell me more about that and what's been happening, how it's being erased.
So with the UK, it's almost like a death by a thousand cuts. You know, our culture, with almost every culture, there's a religion attached to it. With our culture, it's Christianity. Okay, it's weaved into our foundations, it's weaved into our blood, it's weaved into British culture. It's who we are. That's been taken out of our schools. I remember sitting down hymn time to sing. I didn't know I was singing Christian hymns, but I was just singing. We were pulling the book. Someone would sing loud at the back, but we were singing Christian hymns. It brought us together, gave us a sense of community. And it gave us a sense of belonging from a young age. Christmas, you go to London now, you can't even say Christmas festivals. It's celebratory, whatever it is, festival.
Winter holiday.
Yes, winter holiday, or whatever. It's insane. So they're slowly making us taking our identity at the root. And when you've got no identity, you've got no purpose, you've got no drive, and it creates confusion. It creates anger. It creates violence. It creates division, and that's exactly what's happening here in the UK. So my job, when I become Mayor of London, I'm going to say when because I'm really positive, is to re-establish our British cultured umbrella, and underneath that, accept that we have a multicultural society, but we're not a multicultural country. We're a British cultured country with a multicultural society.
What's the single biggest threat to the UK right now?
Those people there. I mean, I've literally just had a situation where we've got probably over 1,000 patriots that have been funneled into this area here. I was made aware of it, and I was made aware that there was some commotion going on. I went over there, I realised what was going on, I realised the police were antagonising them, so I stood up on the railings and I was trying to calm the patriots and also the police. I'm trying to calm them down. And within a matter of minutes, the Stand Up to Racism have tweeted that I was standing on the railings trying to make these people attack these people over here. This is what they've done to Charlie Kirk. They're putting a target on his head. This is absolute lies. I was literally trying to calm everything down. It's disgusting what's going on. The biggest threat we have right now is what these people stand for. They stand for the downfall of our country, the downfall of our culture, the downfall of our children's futures. And we are, like today, we have made an opportunity, and we've taken that opportunity to show the United Kingdom what we are about. We are about love for our country, love for our patriots, and it's literally disgusting to what these people are. It's terrible.
What's the solution to calming down Antifa and to making them stop and see that they are destroying the country that's allowing them to speak? I mean, the only reason they are allowed to go out into the street is because we have free speech.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, it just seems to be going off a little bit over there. But listen, what we need to do is we need to ignore them. We can't talk to them. It's like when you visit asylum. You walk in and the people say, when you walk into asylum, people are going to say things that sound crazy and you're never going to be able to change their minds. That is exactly what is happening over there. These people have been indoctrinated from young, from the colleges to the universities, and we need to be able to take our country back to then hopefully start educating our young about what we really are about. What we're about is unity for our country, protecting our children and their futures in this country.
The single greatest threat the West faces right now?
Islam.
Tell me more.
People still don't see the problem with Islam and migration and everything. So, and a lot of women are going from Christianity to Islam.
Wow.
Also, and I think it's a really big problem for the country and for our culture.
What's it like being a woman in Sweden now?
I don't think it's great at all. It depends on where you are, but are you in the big cities and everything, it's not great. Even if you are an old woman, you can't trust the caretakers because it's migrants from, Afghanistan or, yeah. And we have had a lot of we had a lot of situations where old women have been raped by migrants when they come there to take care of them, and so not even as an old woman or a kid or a grown woman, you can't be safe because they don't have the same mind as us. They don't see a woman as we're not equal. for them. And it's a big problem to have a lot of men like that in our country. It's a big, big problem.
What's the solution?
Deport them all. Just deport them.
Thank you very much. Wesley Winter, what is the single greatest threat to the UK right now?
It's got to be radical Islam. I mean, you look at the 40,000 people on the terror watch list. You had Mohammed Shah Jahan recently been released from prison. He's an Islamic extremist. We also had Younes Sadaghiani, who tried to blow up, what was it? Oh, he did the 7/7 bombings. These people are in the UK and they're not being deported.
Tell me more about this threat from radical Islam, Wesley.
Well, it's almost like a hidden threat at the minute. You know, back in the day, you used to have people like Anjem Chowdhury on the street preaching this. We don't know where it's gone, you know. The people in power, they know where these people are. We're kept hidden in the dark. God knows how many threats and attacks have been, you know, stopped because of intelligence, basically. We don't know, but the threat is obviously there, if that many on a watch list.
How do you solve this problem, Wesley?
I have no idea. People will say Christianity. I mean, you can't treat radicals. These people will always think like this. That's just the way they are. I don't know what the solution is.
Send them home?
Potentially. I mean, if they've committed these crimes, 100%. But if they haven't, then there's got to be, you know, integration within these communities. But evidently, it's not going to happen.
Is there anything else that you're concerned about except for radical Islam?
Just the kind of divide in general, the kind of media perception of this group far right. There was a few scuffles today, and you'll see from the media, the headlines are written, they're gagging for it, they want this to happen. But in general, I think what we see with Charlie Kirk, you have far left activists, but I think the message that these protests should bring is that those who are more centre-left, a bit on the left, how can you bring those people on board to the right, or even to have more discussion in general?
You run around with a mic and a camera, ask many people different questions. Do you feel this divide? Have you felt it because you've reported on so many things? Yeah. You've been to protests, you've been to right-wing rallies, you've been to Antifa marches. You name it, Wesley Winter's been there. Yeah, have you felt this divide?
Well, I didn't know it existed. I just thought it was like good and evil, you know. But didn't really understand it's left and right. I mean, policies in general, those on the left might agree with the right and left, but there's no discourse at the moment, there's no conversation happening. So yeah, in general, you kind of see these divides just naturally form, and I think people just aren't talking in general at the minute.
As Charlie Kirk said, when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
Yeah, 100%, and they don't want to talk at times. You see them with their face coverings. We don't know why they're here, what their message is. If they're paid actors, we just generally don't know. But I think in general, people need to come together. These things can breed extremists on both sides, but in general, we need more people talking.
Wesley, thank you so much. Soothing Semantics and Sahar TV. What is the single greatest threat to the West right now?
Go ahead. Islam.
The Islamization of the West is definitely the biggest threat.
Okay, tell me more about Islam. What do you mean?
Well, all three religions had violent components at a point, but they've reformed. The people have reformed. People get along. They want peace in the West especially. And in the Islamic world, to a large degree, because of the religion itself, a lot of Muslims have an issue reforming, connecting, and getting along with Western culture. Not all Muslims, but the religion itself has an issue with that. And I think in order for us to get along, we all to some degree have to reform and understand that we're all people. We should be able to practice our religions without forcing our beliefs on others.
Do you think that the Islam can be reformed?
The people have to do it. They're going to essentially not be following it to a T. They're going to be choosing the peaceful components of it.
Islamization of the West, you said that specifically. What does that mean? What are you specifically talking about?
It means that we are all in the realm of Dar el-Khar because Islam lost its caliphate in 1924 with Atherton, and right now they're pretty much homeless. So until Islam comes back to be great again and conquer and colonize, we're not going to be at peace, and the values simply don't align. If we live in a place like Spain or a place like England or anywhere else in the world that doesn't align with the Muslim values, we are enemies, we are kuffars, and they'll justify it over and over again. They just justify Charlie Kirk's assassination as killing an enemy of the Muslim nation. All of them, I mean, not all of them. Some people justify it like that. So when the values don't align, that's how you run away from peace. You just create chaos inside and potentially a civil war. So no, Islam cannot reform. They will never reform, because the moment you change the values of Islam, that's when you change the word of God according to them. So they will never change it. No way.
Both of you, We have the Israeli flag behind us. What can the West learn from Israel?
Israel for 77 years has continued to make the same mistake over and over again, and that is to not accept that if we want a Jewish state to exist in peace, even with our minorities, we have to come to terms with the fact that unless we rule it decisively, our enemy will continue to fight us for it. And the moment they see that we truly believe it's ours, which means no two-state bullshit. Can I curse on this? No two-state nonsense. We believe that it's ours, and we claim sovereignty over all of it. The Muslim world will say, we may not like them, we may not ever love them, but we see that they mean business, that they actually, they're willing to do what needs to be done as far as ruling their land as Jewish people over Israel.
Stop giving a damn what the world thinks. At the end of the day, this is your safety. And we realized that after October 7th, when the world started turning their backs at us and on us, we realized that this war must be finished. Because if you call for a ceasefire and then Hamas remains in power, my family's gonna be next, his family's gonna be next. So if there's a threat, eliminate that threat. No matter what the lefties tell you, no matter what the world tells you, fight for it and be powerful with it. That's what Israel does, and that's what Israel should continue to do, because the West has a lot to learn from Israel in that perspective, and that, yeah, that's it.
Right, Adam Brooks, what is the single greatest threat to the UK right now?
The single greatest threat is the erosion of free speech.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Because if we can't air our opinions, if we can't challenge narratives, then we have no future. We have no defense mechanism. I'm a father of 3 kids. That's why I'm here today. Not many other reasons, but the fact that I want my children to have the freedoms that I had growing up, and I want them to be able to air their grievances with their government. I want them to have a safe future, and at the moment our government is working against the people. They're not listening. Mass immigration is a huge problem. For me, it's not about race, it's not about skin colour. I just want people to come to this country in a controlled manner. I want them to work, I want them to abide by our laws, and at the moment, near me, there is a hotel called the Bell Hotel, which I've been...
Very famous, that one.
Yeah, my videos seem to blow up from that, you know, but at the end of the day, we have a local community that has lost a hotel, jobs have been lost. Many restaurants and taxis relied on the Bell Hotel to be open as a hotel. Now it is housing undocumented, unchecked foreign men that we are paying for. Now, I wish no one harm, but they are not our problem. They are economic migrants. Yep. And the local community over the last few years have suffered from many crimes. Yep. We've had the sexual assault of a 14-year-old schoolgirl.
That was deeply shocking.
So I have 2 daughters. I live 2 miles from the Bell Hotel. So the safety for my daughters is paramount going forward. So again, we need to be able to speak freely, to exercise our right to democratic protest as well. And what you're seeing today is, let's say it's 500,000 or 1 million people, I don't know. But this is not a far-right rally. I haven't seen any racism. I will call out racism. It's not for me. For me, this is British people that are worried about their future, worried about their kids and worried about their grandkids.
Sammy Woodhouse, what's the single greatest threat to the UK?
I would say child rape.
That's unexpected. That's a very different answer to what everyone else has given. Tell me more about it.
Well, as we know, that children have been raped throughout the UK. I mean, the work that we're doing on the rape gang inquiry that was set up by MP Rupert Lowe proves that as early as the 1960s, children were being gang raped. You know, I was one of those children that were raped by Oshad Hussein. And, you know, our police, our authorities, the people that were meant to protect us, turned a blind eye because, you know, they were afraid to be called racist or Islamophobic. And this is something that's still been happening to this day. And it's not just our authorities, you know, it goes right all the way up to the Home Office.
What can be done to solve this specific problem?
A lot. It's not just one thing that can fix this. And the thing is as well, because it's been allowed to happen for so long. What we've also got to remember is not only is it happening to children, but we've also got to deal with the aftermath of, you know, people like myself. So if you look at, you know, there's not enough support. Nobody's even been took through the courts to get criminal justice. There's not enough funding. There's not enough, you know, training, proper training that's been done for authorities. The policies, the laws, and everything needs to be changed. You know, there's so much. If you look at our family courts, they're actually allowing rapists to have contact and full custody of, you know, our children that was born from our rapes. It's just so backward. We need an absolute overhaul of our entire system.
Billboard Chris, what's the single greatest threat to the West right now?
The left, all of their radical ideologies that they're pushing. We have all of these neo-Marxist, neo-communist ideologies that put priority on all of these so-called oppressed classes. But certainly the biggest threat to our kids is this, gender ideology. The practice of teaching children that they're born in the wrong bodies and that they need puberty-blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries to be happy. They're sterilizing and maiming children and calling this love. It's totally insane. It's not a fringe thing. Hundreds of thousands of kids now think that they're transgender or non-binary, and the most vulnerable end up in these gender clinics where these ghoulish doctors are destroying the rest of their life.
What can be done to counteract this specific threat? I mean, you've been one of the most, in many ways, the eloquence is in the simplicity of your message. It's the billboard is so simple. I mean, all the billboards that I've seen you wear speak one simple fundamental truth.
Yeah.
And yet, here I am saying you're one of the most eloquent people on the matter because actually you've distilled it into its very essence. How can we counteract gender ideology? How can we stand up to this?
We just tell the truth because we have the truth on our side. Gender ideology was allowed to prosper because of propaganda and because of a lot of money behind it. Billions of dollars from leftist governments and NGOs, money funneled from governments through NGOs, pushed this throughout society, and people didn't know what it was. And the left was successful in conflating being gay with being trans, but these are totally different things. In fact, this is gay conversion therapy for many of these kids who would just grow up to be gay. But it's more than that. These are kids with autism, kids who've been sexually abused, kids who are just struggling. And so how do we combat it? How do we combat anything in life? We tell the truth. Because the truth always resonates and the truth spreads for free. We just need to educate enough people because then they educate more people and like compounding interest, it grows, and that's what we're seeing.
So I'm here with Jonathan Wong from Vox Populi. John, what's the single biggest issue facing the United Kingdom today?
It's probably mass migration and Islam. Actually,
Okay.
that's two issues.
Okay.
But they're quite they correlated because a lot of the most recent migration come from Islamic countries, and there is a dimension of cultural incompatibility that's causing a lot of problem. For example, some of the recent statistics show that Afghanis are 22 times more likely to be convicted of sexual crimes than the Brits.
Perpetrators.
Sorry, perpetrators of sexual crimes. And I actually put that down to when the fall of Kabul a few years ago. So Taliban fought ISIS. ISIS were defeated, so we are taking a massive number of refugees. Guess who are the refugees? A lot of ISIS people. There's 27,000 of them, and each of them, on average, brought 8 dependents, and the ECHR ruled that they don't have to be blood relatives to be counted as family members. So we have 216,000 Afghans came into the country within the last 3 years, and then we have a massive spike of sexual crimes. So that's 216,000 the size of Luton. So we literally imported a city into the UK, and I think the UK military is only about 130,000 people strong. So literally almost twice as much the size of an army just arrived in the last 3 years. It's a bit of a problem.
What do you think are some of the solutions that can be implemented to solve this issue? What would you do?
I think it's got to be remigration. Yeah, basically...
But you say this as an Asian, John. I hate to point the obvious. You are not ethnically English, I assume.
Okay, so there are multiple dimensions to this. So, funnily enough, I was invited to the Remigration Summit in Norway, and the people cannot be more hospitable. Funnily enough, people who actually advocate remigration actually know who their friends and enemies are. It's not a blanket state. I do not have affinity to a rapey migrant just by the virtual immigration status, and I think most people can understand that.
Fair enough. What's the single greatest threat to the West right now?
Migration.
Tell me more.
Illegal migration. Identity, lack of identity, losing identity. Are you a woman?
No.
Why do we have to ask this kind of questions? It's ridiculous. We have to stop this bullshit around our culture, right? We have to be very straight, brave, and very open about what we believe in, what is normal, what is not normal. Freedom of speech. We have to be very, very free in our thoughts, in our discussions, and in our action. You see, whatever you post now on Facebook, here in Britain, you can end up in jail. That's ridiculous. So what we are fighting for in here, what we are fighting is freedom, real freedom of speech. We have to call things as they are. It's enough of political correctness, enough of this bullshit. And we have to call normality, and innormality. Let us say as it is. They do not want the truth. The truth is here on the streets of London today, and we have to show up. We are a silent majority for years. We are not silent anymore. We cannot be silent anymore, Stefan. So I think our duty, as a politicians, but as a citizens, as a patriots, it's to be on the streets, take on streets, cast your vote, be active. Do not spend time only on social media. Take action. It's up to us. Our future is up to us. We have to decide about the future of our children and grandchildren. This is serious. This is not politics. This is actual future of our families. So I do not want my granddaughter to ask me in 20 or 30 years, what have you done when this madness started? Why didn't you stop it? I will stop it. We will all stop this bullshit. It's time for normality, and this is what we are fighting for normality.
I'm here with Younes Sadaghiani, he's an Iranian dissident living in the UK. Younes, what's the single biggest problem facing the United Kingdom today?
The loss of identity, I would say. The woke mind virus and Islamism. So these three things, wokeism, Islamism, Marxism.
Tell me more about all three.
So wokeism is this idea that somehow it's like it comes from a Marxist doctrine of the oppressor versus oppressed.
Okay.
So if you're deemed to be oppressed, then somehow you're the victim, somehow you're on the right side of history, when it's not true. And Islamism is pretty self-explanatory, people that want Sharia law. And it's a loss of identity. Also, I think it comes from the university campuses as well. I think our students are being indoctrinated. And we need to stop that. We are losing the propaganda war, unfortunately, especially amongst the younger crowd.
Tell me more about what you mean by losing the propaganda or the culture war. What does that mean?
So, unfortunately, like for example, like 95% of people are pro-Palestine. Why is that? I think it comes mostly from the university campuses, from TikTok, Instagram. Majority of the people are uninformed. They don't know what they're talking about, and they just jump on the bandwagon. And our responsibility is to inform people and to speak truth. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to speak truth, to speak against the woke mind virus, to speak against Islamism, because your life could be in danger. There's people here with security. We saw what happened with Charlie Kirk. He got shot because of his speech. People like Tommy, people like myself, we have to look over our shoulders just because we have an opinion that's informed by facts, and I don't think that's right at all, and it has no place in the first world civilization that we live in.
Tell me more about the threat of Islamism and the threat of Islamism here in the UK specifically.
Well, it has been going on for a while, unfortunately, and we have a Mayor Sadiq Khan that sort of encourages it and allows it to happen. And if you criticize Islam, or even if you question Islam, they're quick to point fingers at you and call you Islamophobic. But in a free society, like one of the pillars of a democracy is free speech. Without free speech, everything else collapses. And if you're going to be pointed fingers at and be called Islamophobic, xenophobic, racist, sexist, if you want to have a debate about things, that's a sure way for society to collapse. They say save your society for three things: war, hunger, and lies. And wokeism leads to lies.
What do you think of the issue of migration in the UK? You named three things that are interestingly, your answer is three intangible things. They're actually ideas as opposed to like physical things happening.
Right.
What do you think about the issue of mass migration, which is the one that most people are highlighting that I'm asking?
Yeah, so no, it is tangible. War and hunger are tangible things.
Yeah, war and hunger are, but wokeism, Marxism, Islamism are fundamentally, these are ideas that are leading people to do things.
Exactly, but then you have to look at the real world consequences of what happens when Islam takes over, or what happens when communism takes over.
Do you think there's a genuine threat of Islam taking over the UK?
I don't think there is a. I think there is a threat of Islamism. I don't think because of the culture this country has, and I think the people would stand up. So I don't think it will prosper at the end of it. But it's not going to happen by itself. It takes rallies like this and people like us to speak against it for it to stop. Because it took over in my country. I'm Iranian, and we never thought the revolution is going to happen. And within a few months, it did happen. So don't think it can't happen to you.
Thank you, Younes. No. Filip Dewinter, what's the single greatest threat to Western civilization?
I think it's multicultural society. Mass immigration has become the Trojan horse of Islam. And Islam is the biggest threat to Europe and to our European civilization. Look, the Quran is a license to kill. And submitting to Islam is in fact also silencing the freedom of speech. We can't speak about a lot of things anymore just because we have this multicultural society. We don't have a common ground of values that support our civilization anymore. And I think that's the greatest problem and the greatest risk also for freedom of speech, for democracy and for Europe.
Tell me more about multiculturalism. You're from Belgium.
Yes.
Brussels is probably the beating heart of multiculturalism. Yeah. It's the Tower of Babel, a political Tower of Babel, and a Tower of Babel in terms of mass migration. Tell me about it.
Well, Trump was right. He said Brussels is a hellhole, and it is a multicultural hellhole. You have about 35% of the population is Muslim already. In certain suburbs of Brussels, like Molenbeek, Sint-Jans, the Noorden, and so on and so on, you have a majority of Muslims already. So we are submitting to Islam in Brussels. Brussels has become Bruxellistan, an Islamic city, and that's quite cynical because Brussels is also the capital of Europe, and it's now becoming the capital of Islam.
What is the solution to the problem of multiculturalism? How can this be solved?
The biggest problem of multiculturalism is that we are submitting to other cultures who don't belong here. For example, Islam. And their values are not compatible with ours. And in a multicultural society, well, every value is equal. Islamic values, European values, Christian values, other values. It's one big melting pot. A society like a European civilization can't work that way. And that's why I think we should stick to one culture, to one nation, and believe in our values, who are superior to the values, for example, of Islam. If you believe in the freedom of speech, if you believe in the separation of the state and the church, if you believe in the equality of man and woman, you are a European, and you have to stick to your values and recognize that those values are superior to others.
What's the single greatest threat to the Western civilization?
Globalism.
Why?
Because they want to destroy our identities, destroy our borders, flood our countries with uncontrolled mass immigration, increase violence, increase chaos, increase mayhem, and then come in with a solution to enslave us all with digital ID.
So what do I think is the single biggest threat to the West? In my opinion, it's very clearly birth rates, because none of this makes any sense if there's no one to leave a legacy to. We are merely the narrow point of the hourglass linking all of our forefathers to all of our descendants. We are here for a very brief period of time. Everything that we have, the West, all of our beautiful countries that were bequeathed to us by our forefathers, all of these things will cease to exist and will have no meaning if we don't have anyone to leave them to. That is, in my opinion, the single greatest threat to Western civilization today.